At this time, the underground black market also realized that something was wrong. They are familiar with the military, and have their own set of preventive mechanisms. Seeing that a large number of conspicuous military soldiers have emerged in the unfinished real estate, the people who let go of the wind immediately signaled. All of a sudden it was a mess. The underground mutant, Sandflow, who had just traded a batch of extraordinary supplies, immediately packed up the goods and prepared to abscond to another destination along the abandoned subway pipeline. But at this moment, the sand streamer's expression changed, and he immediately felt his body backwards uncontrollably. Hey! All of a sudden, his companions were stunned. They chased down the abandoned subway passage, and saw Shiliu's entire body, like a puppet being pulled, flying upside down towards the dark place behind him desperately. Damn bastard. Sand Lu is well informed, so naturally he won't feel strange and confused, and he knows that he is being targeted by fellow mutants. Underground mutants are not monolithic, and it is common for black people to eat black people. You're messing with the wrong person. My boss is a night girl. As the most famous human radar among the mutants, it is not a good thing to get in trouble with the night girl who has the ability of extreme speed. It is a search radar and a speeder. This matching dual ability allows the night girl to lead a group of wandering mutants. Unfortunately, I'm looking for her, Su Chen said coldly. At this moment, his right hand had already covered the tinling guy, and the massive memory was quickly read. This mutant can manipulate the nearby sand and stone, but the terrifying psychic force is bound to his whole body, and the mental fluctuations are turned into spikes, which penetrate into the depths of the opponent's spirit. This is undoubtedly a kind of torture, so that the idea of sand flow manipulating the surrounding sand and rocks has been pressed down. Asshole. Several of his accomplices followed. Unfortunately, Su Chen waved the other hand slightly, like slapping flies at random, but it set off a great momentum, and the three of them smashed from the ground to the ceiling. Depend on. The entire underground black market has long been chaotic. When people saw the fights here, they were slightly surprised by the young man's fighting ability, but they didn't dare to continue watching, and fled to the exits everywhere. This group of soldiers under General Stryker was not only Su Chen in this operation, but also many underground mutants who escaped became caught. Su Chen, who was not in a hurry, just obtained the intelligence information he needed, and then, without hesitation, the giant force of the psychic force directly broke the neck of this sand stream. Just now, this guy was even smuggling human organs from an orphanage. Put your hands up. In the distance, infrared rays fell on every vital part of Su Chen's back. There are more than 10 red dots on the back of his head alone, which corresponds to more than 10 guns aimed at his head. Little devil, if you move another finger, your head will blow up immediately. But the locked boy completely ignored his words. He turned around so slowly. At the same time, multiple triggers were pulled. Boom. 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 Intensive gunshots continued to sound, and the muzzle of the gun continued to smell of gunpowder. I saw a round of bullets flying straight towards Su Chen with surging kinetic energy. Strictly speaking, not counting training sessions, this is Su Chen's second actual combat, and it is also his first hot weapon against humans. The gun locks on the vitals of the body, giving his sixth sense an instant warning. Maybe less than half a second, the bullet will get close. But half a second is enough. Su Chen's eyes have extraordinary dynamic visual ability, which is enough to bring any action into his eyes like a slow-moving movie. More than that, the excessive development of the brain domain allowed him to accurately capture the dynamic trajectories of 13 bullets, and the surging and exuberant psychic power instantly turned into the same amount of conscious tentacles, entangled in the bullets. Then, it's the exact same color as a scalpel. Despair. With a snap of Su Chen's fingers, the 13 bullets that flew halfway along their own bullet tracks all at once flew back in front of the shooter, as if going back in time. Then, there was no millimeter of deviation in the center of their foreheads. In less than half a second, the gunmen were all headshot and killed. No one knows how much information Su Chen's brain has processed in this short period of time, rigorously, without errors, and like art for a tit for tat. In the initial idea, Su Chen is more than just a memory palace for his brain, collecting all kinds of information. It is a supercomputer that can analyze the location of the path through the soil composition of the enemy's soul, and even further capture the radio wave information of the enemy's intercom, and instantly translate the dialogue. Clearly, he still has some way to go. However, just seeing this shockingly scared the enemy. What happened? Because time is so fast. For some soldiers who were just in position, their eyes only saw that their companions pressed the trigger, and then, For no reason, their heads were exploded instead. What the hell is this? The soldiers, who were already excellent in quality, and even killed a few underground mutants at the entrance, immediately turned pale. Sir. An attempt was made to ask the command if other professionals were to be dispatched. But professionals are already there. Step aside. Under the almost abusive words, several people in black suits have gradually approached Su Chen without any scruples. The first person was a woman. Target is good at telekinesis and telepathy. There is first-hand information about Su Chen, which has already been sent out by the Night Girl. Now, based on my initial knowledge, this is indeed the case. Unfortunately, the existence of this vein in the field of mind is not cheap for us now. The Japanese woman at the head is the dead woman. As he said, telepathy is like touching a barrier to these people. Unlike the red tank per gram, which feels like a mud bull entering the sea, it is useless. These people are obviously wearing some kind of shielding device, so that they can ignore the prying eyes of the soul. Magneto had already done it, otherwise he wouldn't have dared to go out and meet Charles in the future. The Iron Man in the comics is not afraid of such psychic abilities. He even invented a miniature telepathic stun gun. The harder the opponent thinks, the stronger the electric shock will be, which can be called a mind killer. But even so, Su Chen didn't care. These people are undoubtedly pathetic if they think they have only one telepathy on their resume worth dealing with. This is just one of his small abilities, despair. Under the sound of fine footsteps, a figure like a thug in a suit instantly approached Su Chen. Whether it's speed or explosiveness, it doesn't look like a normal person. Clang. When 10 sharp claws suddenly appeared from the dead woman's hands, Su Chen's mind immediately knew her origin. Death Girl, a ruthless person positioned by the female version of Wolverine. For a moment, these people have approached Su Chen. Stereotype. In the face of a leader in the field of spiritual, thinking about ending the battle close to the body is indeed an effective way. But for Su Chen, it is a stereotype. Whoosh. The dead woman took the lead and launched the offensive rhythm first. Hum. The bone claws against the background of her moonlight showed a hint of icy tones. Before she got close enough, her hair stood on end just when she got close. Die. The dead woman ruthlessly pronounced the sentence. The bone claws, which were enough to cut iron like mud, slashed towards Su Chen's stomach. If the claws were eaten firmly, it would definitely open his stomach and his intestines would be poured out. However, within the next second, her pupils suddenly stared. The opponent in front of him easily dodged, and the way of dodging was even more incredible and exaggerated to the extreme. Like a dancer dancing on the tip of a knife, every melee attack of the enemy was dodged by Su Chen by the slightest error. Every time they passed each other, it was only a little distance away, but they were successfully dodged by the other party. The dead woman suddenly realized something was wrong, and at this moment she even thought she was facing a robot. Precise, rigorous, without a trace of error. Is that human being? Her eyes met the young man, trying to observe the young man seriously. But his eyes were full of sarcasm. Damn bastard. This is clearly a person. Put it aside and play by yourself. Boom. But at this moment, Su Chen, who had been able to dodge just now, suddenly made a close attack, directly hitting the opponent with a full heart. The dead woman let out a muffled groan, not expecting that the impact of the opponent's body was so strong that a stream of blood appeared in her throat. She grabbed it with her backhand, but the next second, the joint of her right hand was also detached by the opponent's precise joint technique at this moment, and it was directly pulled down. Just savagely arresting people? Words fall. Su Chen's right hand squeezed a fist, and a huge force emerged from his body, condensed in the heart of the fist, and penetrated into the opponent's embrace. Boom. This punch is not only superpower, but also contains the power of thought. The two are superimposed together, and a very terrifying force is instantly formed at the belly of the dead woman. Boom. The dead woman's face turned pale, her stomach was completely pierced, and then she flew out like a tattered human garbage for an unknown number of meters. Fiasco. Famous for her ferocity, the close-knit female version of Wolverine was directly played to the extreme by Su Chen in melee combat, and then flew out. The same drama plays out the next second. The three thugs in suits who rushed over were ex-weapon personnel. Their personal qualities were far superior to those of special forces, and their bodies were implanted with Wolverine's self-healing factor, making them veritable super warriors. Only. Su Chen treated the dead woman again, completely ignoring the ruthless offensive of these three people. After the battle with Red Tan per gram, Su Chen learned that he had superpowers, and a few days ago, Su Chen borrowed a few fighting videotapes from his friends in the college. These are all joint skills, jeet punches, and even some common close-quarters fighting skills. Su Chen quickly completed the 8-hour videotape in a fast-forward manner in less than 10 minutes. The scary thing is that the reading method that is even more exaggerated than the quantum wave speed reading method has already been completely memorized. Then, Su Chen slowly digested these fighting knowledge in the close combat with them. So, he looks a little machine-like precision, full of some suffocation and rigidity, not too silky and flexible. But the more the fight went on, the suffocation began to disappear. Boom. Boom. Su Chen blasted 2x weapons one after another with a cannon punch. Perhaps the power-generating skills also had an epiphany, so the further behind, the hit X weapons would be killed on the spot in a more tragic way. Boom. There was another muffled sound, and the person who was bombarded was smashed to pieces. It seems that your self-healing ability is not enough to recover from the body split. Su Chen smiled. Piracy is piracy after all. The self-healing factor in their bodies is simply not strong enough to be comparable to Wolverine. Too weak. It's too hard to beat. Not yet fully digested. Before that, they didn't understand at all that Su Chen tried and practiced with the mentality of practicing wooden stakes in this close combat. Now after hearing this sentence, the dead woman immediately vomited blood. How dare this person practice using himself as a sandbag before? It is no wonder that the fighting skills of the whole person are getting smoother and smoother, and the connection between movements is smoother. Puff. The dead woman spit out the last blood in her throat. Compared with other modified human X weapons, as a mutant, she is obviously more powerful, and the blood hole with large defects in her body healed quickly at a speed visible to the human eye. Of the other 3 X weapons, one was directly killed, and the remaining 2 struggled to the ground more slowly. The efficacy of the self-healing factor seems to depend on the concentration of the body, and the dead woman's recovery level is obviously much higher than those of these people. Just. Not enough. Boom. Without waiting for the 2 to continue to recover, a mind-powered artillery shell directly washed the ground, and the remaining 2 X weapons were directly killed. Asshole. As for the dead girl, she moved ahead of time to avoid an oncoming psychic cannonball, but unfortunately, her next landing position was ushered in by Su Chen. Boom. There was another muffled sound, and Su Chen fit directly into the other's embrace. The super-strength physique, combined with the psychic power fluctuations covering the whole body, just contacted, the dead woman only felt that she was being pushed head-on by a train on top of her physique. With a click, the sound of bones breaking all over the body can be heard incessantly. Do not. Under the impact of this force, her body flew upside down involuntarily. It's just that a pulling force suddenly came from the front, but Su Chen stretched out his hand directly, grabbed the opponent's arm, and then, just like the famous scene where the Hulk threw Loki, Su Chen just grabbed the opponent's arm and swung it on both sides of his body repeatedly. Boom. Boom. The earth trembled, and Su Chen, who had no trace of pity and cherished jade, directly riveted with all his strength, and even the ground on both sides formed a pit. When Su Chen let go, it was already a bloody remnant. The keen telepath naturally knew that the opponent's life fluctuations were already weak to the extreme. Without thinking much, in order to prevent the opponent's self-healing factor from recovering, he also took advantage of the situation to make up the last telekinetic cannonball. After destroying the flowers, Su Chen's figure was already walking towards the exit of the underground black market. This. General Stryker's soldiers began to step back. Sir. They retreated again and again, requesting the command vehicle behind to give them the next step. According to the past, many mutants have also died under their subordinates. After all, the entire race of mutants is not all top-notch, strong, and many people are flesh and blood. As long as they don't break away from this shackles, a bullet is enough to blast through each other's heads. But now, the monsters in front of them are simply too strong to be outrageous, and they are not characters that they can handle at all. Now that the X weapons have all died one by one, it is only a matter of time before they retreat. Sir, we need to retreat. Asked again, but still no answer. And Su Chen's figure has come closer. Looking at the figure with faint fluctuations lingering all over the body, and the pair of sharp eyes penetrating from the dark night, everyone felt uneasy in their hearts, and some people even trembled violently. It was as if there was an invisible spiritual deterrent shrouding their hearts. What? Finally, someone couldn't take it anymore, and a nervous soldier suddenly pulled the trigger. Perhaps it was a chain reaction, and a group of people who were in a state of panic also shot at the sound of the gunshot. Only, the smell of gunpowder did not emerge from the muzzle at all, and the guns in everyone's hands were completely jammed at this moment. What's the situation? These dozen people are all stupid. No one can imagine that the bullets were jammed by such a coincidence at the last desperate moment, and they were all jammed together at the same time. What's going on here? Boom. Someone couldn't help but pulled the trigger again, but this time, the guns in their hands exploded directly at this moment, and the entire head was blown open. Coincidentally, some people continued to pull the trigger, and the exact same scene of death came again. Another person was blasted, his body was covered with gun fragments, and he fell bloody. At this moment, everyone is stupid. Looking at Su Chen's figure, I felt more and more nervous. This guy must be the one who started it. Is this guy still human? Turn the weapons in their hands into a fatal nightmare. He is mentally tormenting us. In fact, this magic is indeed caused by Su Chen's spiritual power. Perhaps it was due to reading too many negative emotional pictures, or the killing intent caused by the slaughter just now. He has gradually captured a magical spellcasting method. Modify the probability. Su Chen has been able to use this power consciously. It's like a person throwing a dice 100 times, he can dominate the answer of 6 every 100 times. Bullet jamming is a fact, and it is a small probability event for guns. Su Chen, like a god, tampered with the probability and made this small probability event repeat indefinitely. And this is also the reason why the small probability event of bombing continues to occur after the jam. Modifying the probability and tampering with reality, this mysterious and terrifying stalwart power is in the hands of Su Chen. Ended. Su Chen, whose killing intent was boiling to the extreme, directly used telepathy. He remotely sensed the bodies of these people, made them press the muzzle of the gun against his chin, and then pulled the trigger. Boom. 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 Every soldier ends up in such a horrific tragedy. Su. At the exit of the underground black market, at this time, a lady's figure has gradually walked under the hazy moonlight. It's Qin Gray. After Su Chen left the Mutant Academy, she followed her telepathy step by step, and the command car 3 blocks away was sensed by her, so she could solve the problem. That's why the soldiers have been delayed in receiving notifications. Are you okay? There was a hint of worry on Qin Jilei's face. In the words, she was not worried about Su Chen's life safety, and her innate telepathy had already reflected the surrounding situation in her mind. The enemy is wiped out. The reason why she was worried was because her keen perception had clearly felt that Su Chen's emotions were a bit wrong. Good. Su Chen's boiling killing intent was completely calmed down after the end. It's just that too many negative memories are taken in, so the mental power is more active. Su Chen knew very well about his own situation and was not worried at all. Maybe the next psychological evaluation should be a little earlier. Qin Jilei reminded. It's just that she subconsciously just finished speaking, and suddenly remembered that Su Chen chose to leave the Mutant Academy tonight. At time, there was some loneliness written on her face. As the host of the Phoenix Force, she brought a lot of trouble to the academy. She has experienced many students from childhood to adulthood, but she has too few friends. She ran away from home several times during the rebellious period, but was persuaded to come back by Professor Charles. For more than 3 months now, the two have been in contact many times, and the number of conversations even feels more than what they have said in the past 10 years. It made Qin Jilei feel a little uncomfortable for such a person to talk to suddenly ran away. Compared with other mutant compatriots, Qin Jilei is still closer to Su Chen, who also has an Omega level, in this regard, as if the two were sympathetic to each other. Let's get out of here first. Just as the atmosphere here was silent, there were alarm sounds coming from far and near outside the underground black market. The two walked out along the stairs. In this unfinished building that collapsed due to the financial crisis, many homeless people took a sneak peek at the situation, and some residents of the dilapidated door quietly opened a corner of the curtain to peek at the situation outside. How could these people not be aware of such a big movement in the underground black market? Who would have thought that a bunch of heavily armed soldiers would be buried like this? And many more. At this moment, a hint of anxiety appeared on Qin Jilei's delicate face. What's wrong? Su Chen asked. There seems to be something wrong with the college. I saw Qin Jilei's right hand touching her forehead, which seemed to make her mental induction stronger. I can hear a lot of wailing from the academy, and a lot of gunfire. I felt a little bit just now, but I dealt with several armored vehicle soldiers at the time, so I didn't care about it for the first time. The soldiers in the command car were all handled by her alone, but it was obvious that some important information was missed at this time. Not good. There must be something big going on at the academy. Qin Gri hurriedly grabbed Su Chen's arm, and took Su Chen's figure to take the lead back to the mutant academy. And this moment. Under a snowy mountain somewhere in North America, there is a hidden underwater base, where General Stryker sits and has received good news from various operations. Xavier Talented Boys Academy has been captured. Professor X Charles has been brought back, and the X-Men have almost been wiped out, but Magneto's group has secretly shot, and the brainwave machine has been completely destroyed. Two people with ulterior motives are in a partnership, and naturally they are wary of each other. In fact, there were even secret fraternity members involved in the Academy invasion, who apparently had greater ambitions and purposes. In addition to destroying the very precious brainwave machine, he even took a mutant away on purpose. Little naughty. Damn Magneto. General Stryker is naturally clear that cooperating with Magneto is undoubtedly a joke, but everyone's interests are also unprecedented. If they didn't want to overthrow mutant students, a violent organization dedicated to anti-mutants would not have come together with the Brotherhood. But the biggest calculus of General Stryker's trip was undoubtedly overturned by Magneto. In fact, he needs that brainwave machine and Professor X himself the most to drive the extermination of all mutants. It's a pity. I don't know if Magneto had a premonition of his purpose, and the brainwave machine was destroyed in advance by the other party. And the unknown mutant that the Brotherhood deliberately transferred away has no idea how big a foreshadowing was buried. Soon, another bad news came. The pursuit of the mutant Su Chen has failed. There is no news of the dead woman yet. It is estimated that the entire team lost their lives. This was something that General Stryker did not expect. But that's okay. Professor X has got it, and a lot of mutant students have got it. Even if there is no brainwave machine, it will not prevent me from continuing to promote the experiment. General Stryker sneered. As long as they have the X-gene library they can provide a lot of help for their X-weapons and even the Sentinel robot that has not yet been formed. When Su Chen and Qin Ji Lei returned to the Mutant Academy, part of the walls of the former luxurious and magnificent manor had collapsed, and a wisp of black smoke had not dissipated. The fountain of the manor was even stained with some red blood, and a pierced body floated on it. This. Qin Ji Lei covered her eyes sadly, because she clearly knew that this was a student who had not been in school for a long time. Su Chen pursed his lips and walked into the collapsed building silently. It seems to have been hit by some kind of heavy artillery shell, so that the walls collapsed, and the scene presented in front of them also turned into ruins. Angel. Qin Ji Lei gritted her teeth, and had already seen a corpse exposed under the collapsed wall. I shouldn't have left. Qin Ji Lei's knees were already half on the ground, and her whole head was about to be buried on the ground. She felt extremely self-blame, especially in the sense of her soul. She could not feel the slightest fluctuation of life. The situation was very tragic. Some people disappeared, some people died. And all of this happened because of his departure. Damn. Su Chen's complexion became even more ugly. His hands were pulling at the crumbling, dilapidated building, and he even forgot to use his telekinesis. He finally excavated a figure under the ruins. She's only 8 years old. Su Chen was in a terrible mood all of a sudden, and inexplicable self-blame and guilt emerged in his heart. Yes. Why is he leaving? Just a moment ago, at this most critical moment. A little later may save more lives for this. This is just a school, and most of it is full of underage students and children. Under the self-blame and guilt, there was the uncontrollable mental fluctuation. Su Chen only felt that his consciousness was like a volcano about to explode, and only a little reason left to suppress this mental fluctuation. But the leaked mental energy still blurred the space around Su Chen's body, and even a piece of real space collapsed inexplicably. Qin, do you hate me? Looking at the figure in red who could not afford to kneel, Su Chen said. Suddenly being wanted, he has been led by the nose, and in the end, such a tragic incident occurred, which made him feel extremely aggrieved. This has made Su Chen's anger reach its peak. Tired, destroy it. Feeling the mental energy that was about to explode, this time, Su Chen did not choose to continue to restore his senses, but took the initiative to embrace this power. This also means that he took the initiative to let his spirit run wild. The third out-of-control outbreak begins here. Su Chen's first runaway went out of control and was in an unconscious state. According to Qin Ji Lei's speculation, it should be caused by the complex environment of the community school. The second super runaway was under the threat of Red Tank Ji's life, and when death in the true sense came, unprecedented spiritual energy was stimulated. And for the third time today, it was Su Chen himself consciously loosened the restrictions. Negative emotions ingesting too many memories. The killing intent created by the slaughter. Guilt and duty as well. The violent fluctuations in emotions made Su Chen's mental state more and more in the direction of runaway. Like a volcano poised to erupt, Su Chen could feel that his sanity could still be extinguished, but a series of events tonight made him unable to bear it. With the restriction lifted, Su Chen embraced the spirit energy of the runaway for the first time in a real sense. Boom. In just an instant, the runaway mental energy formed a terrifying annular shockwave directly around Su Chen's body. For a time, a great momentum was set off. Washed by this force, Qin Ji Lei was protected by a barrier, and when she finally came back to her senses, she immediately felt Su Chen's runaway breath. Su Chen. When she realized that the other party's mental energy began to run wild, she immediately knew how dangerous Su Chen's current state was. Boom. With a sonic boom, Su Chen's figure soared into the sky. Its speed is so fast that it directly produces the effect of accelerating the explosion of the fighter. Queens, Hudson River Warehouse. After joining the Mutant Brotherhood, the Wandering Mutant Group also walked out of the city's underground tunnels. With the support of Magneto, they secretly used a warehouse as their base. Not long ago, 3 brothers in the city lost contact. Where's the night girl? I haven't come back yet. She just went out with Magneto Lord for action. If the action is correct, we will have a big action tonight. Big action? Yes, according to the Brotherhood's vision, this world-famous city of Manhattan will be trampled under our feet. At this moment, an inexplicable sonic boom resounded directly above everyone's heads. This explosion sounded like a supersonic fighter cruising through the air, and the harsh engine roar was enough to cover your ears. Not right. Next second, they suddenly felt a terrifying pressure coming from the sky. Quickly disperse. With the sound of an explosion, I saw the ceiling of the warehouse overhead crack directly, and a figure came directly with a terrifying impact. The scary thing is, at such a rapid speed of falling straight, this person actually stopped the falling situation and hovered steadily in front of everyone. From extremely fast to extremely quiet, it simply showed an incredible scene. This man. The impact momentum that can be smashed down abruptly, one can imagine that this person's physical strength is somewhat incredible. It's him. At this moment, after the momentum of the storm gradually subsided, the group of wandering mutants suddenly saw who was coming. Su Chen. The boy who had been in the heart of the Night Girl before, the legendary Omega-level existence. After the failure of the first arrest operation, the Night Girl became annoyed and sent her information to the official agency. This undoubtedly gave Senator Kelly a knife, just as he needed to attack the X-Men with the out-of-control incident at the community school. As for Magneto's collaboration with General Stryker, that's another story. Mystique successfully sneaked into the academy and successfully replaced the energy of the brainwave machine. Once Professor X Charles was recruited, what was waiting was the invasion of General Stryker. The leader of the mutants, Magneto, would not do it boldly. After killing the X-Men with a knife, he also let the members of the Brotherhood smoothly take away the little naughty. Therefore, the two things have nothing to do with each other, but they are intertwined. And none of them thought about the variables. Su Chen. He isn't right. In the midst of this, the members of the underground wandering group who suddenly realized that something was wrong immediately changed their expressions. It was as if a thin creature had encountered a predator at the top of the food chain, and everyone felt a shudder under the invisible mental deterrence. For a while, they couldn't even move half a minute, they just felt it was difficult to move their legs. This guy. When everyone saw it, they saw inexplicable and strange fluctuations around the opponent's body. The lingering airwave even caused the boy's surroundings to collapse. That's right. The mental energy fluctuations leaked by Su Chen not only faintly collapsed the space, but even the air molecules were inexplicably decomposed and annihilated into fine gray powder. The reason why he came here is because of revenge. He had learned about the 2 strongholds of the Night Girl before. One of them is the Queen's Wharf warehouse. The terrifying invisible fluctuations of the mind were released from Su Chen's mind. Due to the excessive factor of mental runaway, this mental storm spread out of the warehouse at once, and radiated to the small half of the river bank. In this savage mental invasion, everyone felt as if their heads had been pried open, and then, excessive memories were quickly extracted. In less than a second, this psychic invasion was over. Die. But Su Chen's execution also followed. Hovering in midair, He didn't make any physical movements at all, and he didn't even wave his hands. Just a word of death came out of the mouth, and a terrifying and mysterious power immediately spread to the real space. Spiritual power penetrated into reality, and the power of tampering with reality was activated at this moment with great ease. Boom. 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 As if he followed the law, the entire warehouse was intimidated by all the spirits, and it was difficult to move half a minute. The invisible force of reality completely distorted the body, and the body was suddenly twisted. Puff. The blood mist also exploded along with it, and all the underground mutants present died. The mutant at the Queen's Wharf warehouse was completely killed, and Su Chen hasn't said a word since. It's just that compared to the normalization, the runaway, Su Chen added some arrogance to that handsome and childish face. The black hair is automatic without wind, and the whole body is surrounded by a mysterious wave of mysterious power. After the battle was over, he did not stay, and the whole figure suddenly disappeared in place. This time, he did not use his psychic power, so as to wrap himself up to achieve flight. Whoosh. When he appeared in the next second, he had already come to more than 10 blocks away, and when the figure appeared, there were even faint ripples in the same place. It is the same visual sense as the wrinkled water pattern on the lake surface formed by the twists and turns of space. In short, this is teleportation. Obviously, this is also a newly formed ability. After all, Su Chen's genes in the body are tens of millions of times the mutation rate of normal people. The evolutionary evolution that ordinary creatures take millions of years to complete may only take one day on him. In the process of mental bewilderment, the speed of gene mutation and the degree of cell vitality are far beyond normal, so this is a very exaggerated evolutionary process. You must know that the ancestors of birds in the past did not know that it took tens of millions of years to grow a pair of wings to fly into the air. It took millions of years for early ape men directly to rise to Homo erectus. As for Su Chen at this time, maybe only half an hour, 15 minutes, or even 1 minute. Whoosh. Whoosh. Under multiple teleportation, Su Chen's figure has spanned more than 10 kilometers, from Queens to Brooklyn. The earliest industrial base in the past has now disintegrated many real economies under the financial crisis. The backward industrial area not only hatched a large number of workers, among them, one of the most well-known superheroes, the legendary feats of World War E. The American team Steve grew up here. Not good. In a bankrupt factory, a bewitching woman with tattoos on her face frowned. It's him. As a mutant radar, why didn't she sense that a very terrifying force was gradually approaching? Just a rough scan induction, you can feel an omega-level terrifying fluctuation. The most important thing is that this terrifying force disappears from time to time, intermittently, but it is extremely close to where he is. Not good. The night girl panicked. Even with the level mechanism he set, this guy has already broken through the sky, and the level fluctuations of Lord Magneto are no different. Run. Must run. Night lady. In the trance of everyone, the figure of the night girl suddenly disappeared into the night with the blessing of super speed. This. The wandering mutants left in the factory are dumbfounded. What is going on? But inexplicably, they also felt that something was wrong. Otherwise they wouldn't let this woman turn pale, and they wouldn't care about anyone running away first. Run. When everyone realized that the catastrophe was imminent, a terrifying force suddenly came. Hum. With a wave of water like ripples, Su Chen, who had moved through the space in an instant, had come to the factory. Despair. The moment his body appeared, Su Chen's right hand snapped a crisp finger. The terrifying power of tampering with reality suddenly surged out. Do not. Under the cry of despair, I saw one after another figure obliterated by an invisible force. It was like a three-dimensional pencil was wiped on their bodies, and everyone's figure disintegrated and collapsed like this, without any blood splashing, only a stream of gray debris scattered in the air. This scene is a bit like Thanos snapping his fingers to obliterate the sense of sight. To obliterate from the real level, if Su Chen's mental fluctuations can be stronger, it can even involve obliteration on the time level. In this way, it is not as simple as the destruction of the human body. Once the time that belongs to him is erased, any memory about him and any information about him will be erased. No one remembers him, and there is no evidence that his name has ever appeared. This is the further power of reality obliteration. Just thinking about it carefully can make you feel extremely scary. Do not. The desperate wandering mutant didn't even know what was going on, and could only watch his body disappear like dust. It was like a mud castle built with quicksand that collapsed and disintegrated. Damn. And this scene, although the night girl did not see it, but her radar could feel that the factory building in the previous second had lost all the lives of its subordinates. That guy instantly killed all his subordinates. Su Chen. She gritted her teeth and realized who it was. Can't beat you. Can't I run? The night girl played her role as a speeder and traversed more than 10 kilometers of urban areas in a few seconds. Taking this opportunity, she was still carefully capturing the trail of the trailing figure. Not good. Getting closer. When she realized that her super speed couldn't get rid of the figure behind her, in desperation, the night walker took all her strength and moved fast in a specific direction. This time, it is estimated that he has already maxed out his running record. Lord Magneto, save me. And the night girl also successfully came to the headquarters of the Mutant Brotherhood, and directly asked the omnipotent mutant leader for help. The night girl was moving so fast that it didn't take much time for her to arrive at the headquarters of the Brotherhood of Mutants. As the underground mutants who had just been incorporated, the night girl and the wandering mutant group she led were more like an extra staff organization and were not eligible to live in it. As for the night girl, because of her excellent radar searchability, she was rather appreciated by His Excellency Magneto. So, when an extremely fast-moving figure approached, no member of the Brotherhood stopped him. It was just a figure that appeared out of thin air and stopped her directly. This guy is like a demon described in Western fantasy novels, with a pair of sharp ears, and a tail with an iconic demon tail. It's the Red Devil. He has the ability to teleport, mind control, etc., so he was able to stop the night girl for the first time, and exerted terrible mind control on her. The figure of the night girl seemed to be completely wrapped by a bubble, and was suspended in the air invisibly. Put me down. Her hands and feet swayed like a drowning person, but she couldn't get rid of this mind-controlling power. Are you crazy? Lord Magneto is holding a ceremony. The era of mutants is about to come, and this is also when Lord Magneto puts on the crown and becomes emperor. In such important times, you are not allowed to make a scene outside. The Red Devil said ruthlessly. Under the night, there was a dim old castle behind the two of them. Against the hazy moonlight, the old castle was like a giant steel beast entrenched in the darkness. It's not too far from downtown Manhattan, but no one could imagine that this deep castle would gather so many fraternity members. Logically speaking, it is difficult to hide. The reason is that one of the members of the Brotherhood can spread fear, and the entire ancient city is surrounded by radiation protection against humans. Once a normal person approaches, there will be a sense of fear in their hearts and they will panic and leave. And now, in the castle, an important coronation ceremony is ready to be held, and the era of mutants is ready to come. The sacrifice is ready. By then, the bustling city of Manhattan will be full of mutants. The Red Devil said with longing. Not long ago, Magneto successfully acquired a gene transformation device that can release the radiation field of strong electromagnetic force fluctuations, stimulate the expression of the human body's X gene, and even allow normal people to have an extra X gene. This is a terrifying instrument that directly makes people genetic mutation. Certainly. To run this radiation machine requires too much energy, which requires Magneto himself to provide endless electromagnetic fluctuations. However, as he gets older, the endless extraction of electromagnetic force will also cause his body to age uncontrollably. Even if there is a small probability that he will not die, it will greatly reduce his strength. This is what he is not allowed to see. If you want to control so many members of the Brotherhood, how can you hold such a vicious dog without absolute strength? So, here's the thing. Little Naughty. The Little Naughty physique is very special, and anyone who touches him will be drawn from superpowers and vitality. Magneto fell in love with her and definitely made her a sacrifice for this great ceremony. That's why, after removing the thorn in the eye, Professor X, Charles, he had to specifically target such a little girl. When all the millions of people in Manhattan are transformed into mutants, I will get a huge army of mutants. And then use this as the foundation to radiate the whole country, the whole continent, and even the whole world, and the Earth will also become the world of mutants. And I am the Emperor of Mutants, the founder of the Mutant Kingdom. At that time, the whole world will have one voice, one will, and one leader. That's me. Magneto. At this moment, Magneto in the castle has made his final speech on the high platform. Whoa. For a time, the enthusiasm under the castle was high, and the cheers and shouts came one after another. The Mutant Emperor, Magneto, be crowned. Let's kill those humans, Magneto. The fraternity members cheered and waited for the final ceremony. It seems that they have already realized that they will witness the establishment of the Mutant Kingdom, and everyone is very excited. looking at the sacrifices on the high platform with a pair of eyes. Do not. The 14-year-old little naughty was forcibly held by Magneto's right hand. In an instant, Magneto's complexion suddenly became painful, and his superpower had been absorbed by the other party. Make good use of this power of mine. Magneto blocked the channel from which his power continued to flow towards the opponent. Under the custody of the members of the fraternity on both sides, the little girl was tied to the stool in front of the instrument. The silver-white gene transformation instrument suddenly started. Do not. When he was forcibly pressed his hands to the absorption position, the little naughty immediately felt that his power began to spew out like the gate of a dam. Strange radiation fluctuations also erupted from this genetic transformation instrument. What? The little naughty immediately felt that his vitality was beginning to drain, and even his jet black hair was inexplicably white. Very good. Magneto looked at the scapegoat with great satisfaction. These large-scale radiation fluctuations that stimulate the body to form the X gene are not effective against mutants. Therefore, the members of the Brotherhood are not worried, but are very happy waiting for the era of mutants in the city. Certainly. These ignorant guys don't even know the dangers of this genetic transformation device. True. This strong radiation does make people generate the X gene, which is the symbol of mutants, but then, the human immune system will attack the suddenly formed, alien gene. This is normal. Foreign organ transplantation will cause the body to form a rejection reaction, which requires frequent adjustment of medicines. And the newly formed foreign X gene will also make the immune system completely attack itself, and then, the gene collapses and dies. So this isn't transforming mutants, but a real bloodbath. Magneto doesn't know a thing. Everyone present didn't know that either. But it doesn't matter anymore, because the god of death who was brought in by the misfortune has already knocked on the door. Inside the castle, the excitement was high, and everyone cheered the arrival of a new era. Outside the castle, killing intent suddenly erupted, and dangers abounded. At this moment, even the Red Devil realized something was wrong. The Night Girl's urgent visit and call for help, as well as the sudden and strong mental fluctuations approaching, also made him wrinkle his head. This guy is strong. But this is not a place you can visit. The Red Devil was furious, and the full-blown mental fluctuations suddenly converged into a terrifying mind-piercing, directly attacking the constantly approaching figure. In less than a second, his mind-piercing suddenly plunged into the sea and disappeared without a trace. Not only that, it may be an extension of the mind, and it also takes the opportunity to be caught by the attacking person. What? The Red Devil should never have extended his mental tentacles to the opposite head. This unwise move also caused the opponent to reversely erode, and an even more terrifying spiritual fluctuation emerged in his mind. A tooth for a tooth, an eye for an eye. The influx of massive mind fluctuations directly converged into a sharp shape, and then this invisible sharp thorn directly pierced his soul consciousness. It hurts. At this moment, the Red Devil only felt that his head had been penetrated, and the front and back sides were completely exposed to light, and the severe pain even caused him to faint for a short time. If it weren't for his own strength and quality, he would suddenly fall to the ground if he suddenly regained his senses. Not good. The Red Devil suddenly realized that he had hit a hard nail. Well, you, a night girl, even brought such a powerful enemy here. He couldn't handle this, and he didn't dare to bite the bullet and confront the enemy who came from behind. Therefore, he could only let the night girl go, and he was also preparing to move in an instant. The ripples and fluctuations in the space set off all around, just as his figure was preparing to travel through the space, so as to escape in an instant. A terrifying fluctuation of reality power came and stopped his pace. And many more. The Red Devil's pupils suddenly stared, and the spatial fluctuations set off had dimmed inexplicably, and his figure remained in place. Asshole. Is this what the guy did? That's right. In this short period of time, Su Chen, who had just learned to teleport, further explored the ability to use space. Especially based on the real space level, Su Chen easily stopped the Red Devil's desire to travel through space completely, just because the space around him was completely blocked by himself. Done. When the Red Devil with a severe headache felt that the enemy was behind him, he couldn't move his body, because a terrifying wave of psychic power had imprisoned him in place. In an instant, the willow tree not far away was clattering, and soon, under the action of an invisible force, a willow tree flew out. Peefed. Peefed. Under the sound of piercing flesh and blood, the Red Devil couldn't even see the enemy's appearance, so he was completely penetrated by the branches of the willow tree. There are blood holes all over the body, and the blood is pouring. Under such terrifying and inexplicable strength, the Red Devil fell into a pool of blood so unwillingly. And this time, the faint ripples and fluctuations in the space have not yet calmed down, and Su Chen's figure has completely shuttled over. When his figure completely fell to the ground, the Red Devil's body also fell to the ground. Su Chen, who was in a violent state, looked at the old castle in front of him. He could clearly feel that the Nightcrawler was inside, and he could clearly feel the existence of mutants who were strong or weak. There was even one more terrifying than an Omega-class Iceman. Magneto. If it is the normalized Su Chen, maybe he has to think and worry about it. But the violent Su Chen broke in without hesitation. And this way of breaking in is somewhat unique. The violent mental fluctuations trembled violently, and the long-lost ability of imagination was once again used by Su Chen. His thoughts permeate reality at this moment, and come to reality. His will is completely communicated with the world. Simply put, everything you think about will come out of nothing. This time, it was the X-Men's Blackbirds that suddenly ripped through the night. The special cruising sound shocked the Brotherhood of Mutants in the castle, like a PTSD disease attack, and suddenly felt terrified. Wrong. Isn't this the black technology fighter of the X-Men? How can it appear here? Haven't they fallen and been arrested? How is this going? Seeing this scene, the members of the Brotherhood, who had been fighting for a long time, and even suffered from deflation, became a little scared. But the next scene made their eyes widen and they were completely dumbfounded. And many more. What is this? How come there are so many fighter jets? Fraternity members are utterly stupid. In the sky above the deep castle, several more Blackbird fighter planes suddenly appeared, swooping down from the sky like dumplings, and smashed straight into the base of the Brotherhood members. Not only that. A train imagined by Su Chen rushed out of his mind, burst into reality with white steam, and slammed straight into the gate of the ancient castle. Boom. The door shattered in response, and the surging steam power made this figurative retro train invincible. It continued to smash walls, and the castle hall behind it was completely presented to Su Chen. Who dares to make trouble? At this moment, an extremely terrifying fluctuation of willpower suddenly erupted in the hall. It's the mutant leader Magneto. He directly raised his right hand and squeezed it hard. The train was rolled into a ball like a twist, and the fighter planes in the air suddenly exploded in midair. Gorgeous fireworks bloomed in the air, and the metal fragments appeared as meteors and fireworks continued to slide down, which also made the environment under the dark night light up all of a sudden. This also made Su Chen's figure completely appear to everyone present. And he didn't have the slightest fear, so he walked in arrogantly with a gesture of contempt for all the enemies in the world. Lord Magneto, it's this guy, the Night Girl said in shock. At this time, at the big gap that was smashed by the retro train, a figure came into everyone's eyes. Under the sound of the big explosion just now, the meteor flames fell to the ground, and everyone could clearly see each other's figure and face. Unfamiliar at first sight. With a white shirt and sweatpants, with a slender and robust physique, he has the temperament of a sports teenager who plays quarterback on campus. Certainly. People can't ignore the inexplicable fluctuations that linger around their bodies. This man. The faint blurred fluctuations lingered around his body, and made the surrounding air molecules fade away, which was like a terrible annihilation force field lingering around him. Dark Phoenix? Magneto suddenly felt a familiar aura fluctuation. Qin Ji Lei, the child he had always been optimistic about, was the one he brought back to the academy with Professor Charles himself. The surging and exuberant mental fluctuations of the Phoenix Force often make people run wild and out of control. Before Professor Charles used the mind prison to cut off negative emotions, Qin had to break out of control a few times. Magneto still clearly remembered that the young Phoenix girl had used a terrible disintegration wave when she ran wild. It is a terrifying power that can completely collapse and decompose everything, and annihilate everything in front of you into ashes. The personality is blackened and everything is ruined, so it is named Dark Phoenix. If it weren't for the fact that this power had not fully erupted, I am afraid that he and Charles might not have been able to hold together at that time. So after so many years, Magneto is still obsessed with the terrifying power of the Phoenix Girl, and if necessary, he is even willing to hand over the future of mutants to the other party. The premise is a Dark Phoenix that can communicate. But obviously you are not her after all. This is not the fluctuation of the power of the Phoenix. The power of the Phoenix is the ultimate power from the depths of the universe. It is known as the connection point of the spirit of all things, the incarnation of life and emotion, the source and creator of spiritual power, and the judgment of the phoenix alone is enough to burn up everything in the universe. The power of the phoenix is unique in the universe, and it is dazzling. Your power is nothing but madness and disorder. Magneto just overlooked the figure walking from a distance on the high platform. Speaking of which, your appearance reminds me of Professor X's son. The same spiritual realm, the same Omega-level existence, is really nostalgic. Of course, Professor X probably didn't tell you what happened to the big Chun, Jun Yang. He went crazy in the end. This person with split personality was sent to the hospital by me. Professor X's son, David Charles Haller, is an extremely promising Omega-class being. Unfortunately, it ended up going crazy. The mentally ill patient with multiple schizophrenia was finally sent to a mental hospital. The ruthless Charles hasn't even seen him in over a decade. Magneto folded his arms and stood at a high place looking down at the approaching figure. In his words, he satirized Su Chen, who was ushering in, intentionally or unintentionally. Perhaps it was Magneto's series of taunting behaviors that calmed everyone's shocked expressions, and some members of the Brotherhood dared to stand up. You have to be careful. The Night Girl realized the danger of these people's actions, and immediately wanted to say something to stop them. You must know that she was driven away by the other party like a lost dog, and the Red Devil was killed at once. Do these unknowing people think that Magneto will be saved from death by supporting him? Lord Magneto, I will dedicate the other party's head for your coronation ceremony. Little devil, lend you a human head, someone shouted. There were also people who were shocked that the other party did not dare to act rashly. However, there will be at least some idiots among the more than 300 people present. The members of the Brotherhood who thought they had the backing of Magneto immediately started. A mind wave invaded, and along with it, a long tongue with great penetration force suddenly flew from the top of the head. In front of him, a terrifying and sturdy figure rushed towards him. To this, Su Chen, who was windless and automatic, and lingered with terror waves, just waved his hand indifferently. Shaw. The long tongue that was uttered by the mutant toad was suddenly cut off, along with his throat, with a squeak, and blood spurted from the stubble of the neck. No matter how he covered it, he couldn't stop it, and he couldn't stop a drop of blood from flowing. And the mutants who were rashly mentally attacked were even more severely injured, and they spewed blood and died under the backlash of their spirits. As for the strong man rushing in front of him, he just ran a few steps, and before he got close, his whole body disintegrated and collapsed, and a large piece of powder disappeared all at once. This guy All of a sudden, everyone was a little stunned. Many Blackbird fighter jets appeared out of thin air. They didn't witness it in person, and they didn't know what was going on in the sky outside. They only heard the splendid sound of explosions. If they learned about the terrifying conceptual ability of imagination realization, it is estimated that these minions would not dare to block the hall passage. And this time, all have to die. The rampant Su Chen finally said the first sentence. Against the monstrous airwaves, a sarcastic smile appeared on his wicked face, and he even laughed at Magneto's self-control. In a state of mental runaway and out of control, a single thought of his can communicate with the world and make his will fully manifest, and every word of his penetrates the reality and changes the world accordingly. Not good. Just saying, you have to die, is like death's decree, and many people present directly covered their hearts, only to feel their heart cramps. Many people stepped on the air with their feet and struggled desperately, but they couldn't help being grabbed by an invisible big hand and suddenly lifted their necks up. There were also some people whose bodies disappeared inexplicably, like a stone pillar eroded by weathering, and it turned into powder with a slight movement. Magneto's judgment is correct. This runaway mental force is indeed a bit messy and disorderly, so that the death methods of various people are a bit different. The most terrifying thing about Su Chen's rampant first sentence is that he again inexplicably summoned an extraterrestrial meteor, which suddenly smashed towards everyone's location. For Su Chen, the second mental runaway was hysterical because of death threats. As for the third initiative to go berserk, the whole person is calm and restrained. Of course, it does not prevent an evil and arrogant temperament from being revealed. Immediately after saying, "All have to die," the emotions permeated the reality, and all the members of the Brotherhood in the hall of the ancient castle fell into their own struggles. What's even more frightening is that his surging and high mental fluctuations even triggered an extraterrestrial meteorite unconsciously. If this meteorite falls, the entire ancient castle will be razed to the ground, and everyone present should not try to escape. Are you human? Magneto is half dead. On the high platform in the hall, it is an extremely precious genetic transformation instrument. If it is smashed by such a meteorite, this instrument will not be able to keep it, and the members of the Brotherhood are estimated to be wiped out. And the degree of madness of this guy is beyond his imagination. The meteorite that appeared out of thin air was the target of the hit, along with him. This is to burn the jade and stone together and die together? Damn bastard. I want you to die, Magneto growled. At the coronation ceremonies celebrated by the members of the Brotherhood, at the moment when the mutants were about to usher in a new era, this uninvited guest was literally knocking on the door and taking a whole lot of their lives. The celebratory banquet turned into a bloody purgatory, and the elite members of the Brotherhood kept falling. All this made Magneto's anger soar to the extreme. Young man, you shouldn't mess with me. Under the indifferent and ruthless words, hides the extremely violent killing intent. Magneto was really angry. His figure has been slowly flying under the action of a terrifying invisible force. Wearing a steel helmet that isolates all spiritual intrusions, and a black cloak, it makes it impossible to see that this is an old man who is officially entering his old age. His hands suddenly rose high. It was because of his gesture of raising his hand that the meteorite that fell from the sky was suddenly supported by him from a long distance. Wow. Even the members of the Brotherhood who were not affected by the death outside the castle were shocked by this performance. I don't know how high the sky is. How dare you be arrogant in front of me if you know a little trick and little ability? Magneto swung gently, and the extraterrestrial meteorite that he was dragging with invisible force was suddenly like a shot put by him, easily changing the trajectory of the meteorite, and throwing it into the Hudson River not far away. One stone stirred up 1,000 waves, and when such a large stone fell, a column of water dozens of meters high was stimulated. Magneto's hand is an understatement. The reason for this, including the reason why he can fly, is that he can master the electromagnetic force, and it also interferes with the influence of the original magnetic field of the Earth on him, offsetting the effect of gravity on him. The influence of Lao Wan in the film and television version is nothing more than manipulating metal. But this is one-sided. In fact, the real power of Magneto Eric is the electromagnetic force that controls the 4 fundamental forces of the universe. This means that he can manipulate all forms of energy within the electromagnetic spectrum, ultraviolet, invisible radio waves, X-rays, etc. Today, he is more able to exert an influence on the Earth's magnetic field for a short period of time, thereby disturbing gravity and letting a huge meteorite toss away along the magnetic field lines. The ubiquitous magnetic field in nature is his natural help. For this reason, he can move mountains and carry a football field. Seeing that a young man challenged himself without knowing what to do, destroying this coronation ceremony, this made Magneto unbearable, and he no longer needed to endure it. Chi chi chi. Just then, a puff of black smoke came out from the instrument behind. Do not. This is the pathetic cry from Magneto Eric. The genetic transformation instrument was actually damaged, and the structural parts inside were inexplicably stuck, so that the instrument could not operate again, and black smoke was emitted. The shutdown of the machine also means that the strong radiation fluctuations that have gradually spread out have stopped. The million mutant transformation plan that Magneto imagined has since aborted. Why? Magneto was so excited that his hands trembled, he couldn't understand why the machine under his protection suddenly couldn't work. Machine failure is a common thing, and it is not impossible for a machine to have such a failure at this critical moment. It is only a slight change of probability to make such a small probability event happen directly. For Su Chen, it is just a thought. Ha ha ha. The spirited Su Chen is obviously not as restrained as usual, and that sarcastic smile is undoubtedly very harsh to Magneto. A picture that showed what he did, but made the Magneto just now helpless. This was undoubtedly the most powerful counterattack against his previous rude remarks. Magneto's dream has since been shattered by Su Chen like a bubble. Although he doesn't know that this plan will only add millions of deaths, but now Magneto can't care about it, he has been driven crazy by this teenager. Not killing you is not enough to vent your anger. Magneto, who was about to whip him into a corpse, suddenly extracted a force from the magnetic field under his feet. Yes. Not only the natural magnetic field of nature can help him infinitely, but even he himself can absorb the magnetic force of the planet. With a steady stream of energy emerging, the slightly aged Magneto suddenly became younger, and his white hair glowed with a black luster. Perhaps it was the huge electromagnetic interference, and even the fluctuation of reality that Su Chen inexplicably stimulated lost its effect, and many members of the Brotherhood saved their lives for this. Come. Just let you see why I am the king of mutants. Words fall. It seems that in response to Magneto's will, for a while, the entire ancient castle that was sleeping on the ground suddenly sushing. Under the surging magnetic fluctuations, even the entire ancient castle was endowed with magnetic energy. For a time, as if it was endowed with life, the castle entrenched on the ground also had a dangerous atmosphere. It's too late, it's too soon. Boom. The terrifying explosion sounded, and I saw that the cable steel pipes buried in the ground, and even the steel bars laid in the walls were completely alive, and suddenly plunged toward Su Chen in the field. The indifferent and arrogant figure did not feel any fear when the snakes danced wildly, but raised his eyebrows indifferently. An invisible wave of psychic power condensed around his body, and in the blink of an eye, it directly formed a three-dimensional barrier. Whether it's in the sky or the ground, take care of everything. Kang. The harsh and sharp impact sound came frequently, and the reinforced iron pipes and even the cable pipes fell on the barrier without exception. Not enough. Use some force, old man. Those words that were enough to make people feel flat came from Su Chen's mouth, and all of a sudden it made Magneto's face a little more angry. Death to me. The magnetic force rose again, and the natural magnetic field scattered in the heavens and the earth continued to gather in Magneto's body, and boosted his strength within a breath or two. Call. Magneto's breath became more and more solid, and his every move was as if he wanted to overturn mountains and seas, full of surging power. Click. At the same time, under the blessing of the terrifying magnetic fluctuations that continued to pour in, the three-dimensional barrier in front of him finally showed cracks, like the lines of broken glass. Who? There was another angry shout and a loud bang, and Magneto finally completely defeated the barrier. Whoosh. 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 Under the stimulation of the surging magnetic energy, the steel cables that were blocked outside were also swiftly like a bolt of lightning, running through the figure inside Blessing. It is good. As expected of His Excellency Magneto. The sound of the roar came, and the members of the Brotherhood seemed to have seen the other party's death like being pierced by thousands of arrows. But unfortunately, it was still a step behind. Swish. The lightning-like attack fell into the air, smashing an afterimage that stayed in place one after another. And the main lord disappeared in place so quickly and incomparably. At this time, there was a warning sign in Magneto's mind. He did not know how many years he had fought, and his tempered body captured the breath of the visitor for a while. Behind. Snort. Magneto snorted coldly, and under the action of strong electromagnetic force, a force field barrier formed directly around his body. With a bang, Su Chen's sudden fist slammed into the barrier. But, in less than half a second, Su Chen's fist was a very bizarre shuttle barrier, passed through the barrier without any hindrance, and hit Magneto's back all at once. This time, it made Magneto's face more serious. This guy's abilities are really endless, and he is very tricky. But kid, you're too close. The magnetic fluctuations around Magneto's body are too strong. Even if it is a non-magnetic object, it will endow huge magnetic energy in the field of his body. Roll. He shouted angrily, and Su Chen, who was approaching, couldn't hold back a strong repulsion. Before his fist was officially hit, his whole body flew out like this. Whoosh. Due to the terrifying magnetic empowerment relationship, Su Chen's figure smashed many walls of the manor behind like a cannonball. Bring it back to me. Magneto waved his hand, and under the control of his own will, the figure that flew out was once again absorbed by a terrifying attraction. However, just halfway through the flight, Su Chen's figure slipped away again. Where can you run to? There are magnetic fields all over the world, and countless magnetic field lines run through the whole world. Magneto is so angry that he has become the master here, and he has become the overlord who dominates the entire world. Die. Without waiting for Su Chen's figure to appear again, by sensing the biomagnetic field possessed by every human body, Magneto instantly captured the opponent's upcoming location. Then, a stream of blood spurted out from Su Chen's body like a fountain. Die. It is no wonder that Magneto made a lot of nonsense before, and he stretched out his hand to show it, directly showing the momentum of a spike. Little child, I wonder if you have any common sense in class. Every human body has a biomagnetic field, and the entire Earth has a natural magnetic field. Then. That is, everyone has a small amount of iron in their body. As long as I have one thought and one will, the iron in your body will penetrate all your internal organs. The domineering Magneto coldly explained the reason for the spike just now. So incomprehensible. Horrible. With the Earth's natural magnetic field and the human body's own biological magnetic field, how many enemies and opponents in the world dare to stand in front of him? I can put one of Charles's sons in a mental hospital, and I can put you in the same. No, you should die without a place to die. Remembering that the coronation ceremony was completely destroyed, the Million Mutant Project was aborted. This hatred is unbearable. Even if he admires this young mutant again, he will die. The figure with blood all over the body in front of you is the best end. But the next scene immediately made Magneto's pupils shrink. What? I saw the figure whose organs were destroyed by the iron element in his body, and suddenly there was a surge of life magnetic field fluctuations. And the blood that was wantonly spilled out of the body was like stepping back in time, and they went back to Su Chen's wounds everywhere. The drop of blood spilled on the ground also seemed to be given life, each jumping to the wounds everywhere. In the blink of an eye, an unharmed living person appeared in everyone's eyes. At this moment, everyone is stupid. This isn't human, it's not human at all. Monster. This is a monster. Magneto once competed with Wolverine, To be precise, he unilaterally crushed Wolverine. The other party's body of Edmund Alloy is completely looking for abuse, making the other party obedient like a tamer. One thing worth appreciating is that Wolverine's body is full of incomparable self-healing factors. Even if it is a serious injury, it can be resurrected safely. In the comic version, he was able to completely recover and become like a normal person when his whole body turned into a puddle of flesh and blood. It's just a little pain. Only. Compared to Wolverine, Su Chen's performance in front of him is incredible and incredible. Is this a human? Who would have thought that a person's gushing blood could flow back and return, as if the time went back a second, and the dripping blood repaired his injury? Gulong. Some people swallowed and suddenly felt some real fear. Especially that drop of blood was so alive that it had spirituality, and jumped from the floor back to the youth's physique. Is this really human? Click. Su Chen twisted his neck in such a way that nothing happened, and his indifferent face showed no trace of panic, which was enough to move people. Good. He said coldly and arrogantly. Humph. In order to suppress the other party's arrogance, Magneto raised his hand. He didn't care how strange the other party's physique was. As long as he was there for one day, the other party would surely die. He was about to repeat his old tricks, and when he concocted the performance just now, a look of surprise appeared on Magneto's face. Wrong. At this moment, Magneto obviously couldn't feel the trace amount of iron in the opponent's body. It was as if this deadly element had completely disappeared from the opponent's physique. He hesitated for a moment, and in less than 2 seconds, his expression became even more serious. After this time, Magneto couldn't feel the other's biomagnetic field. This is impossible, and it's too far-fetched. How could the biological magnetic field and trace iron elements possessed by each person not appear on the other person's body at all? The weirdest thing is, isn't it good for the other party to exist in a situation where he was tyrannized by him in the first few seconds? Why did it suddenly change its appearance after a few seconds? The unknown brings fear. The answer that common sense and experience could not answer made the battle-hardened leader of mutants inexplicably panic. Didn't you fight an Omega-level existence, or my type? How? Are you panicking? Are you starting to be afraid in your heart? Su Chen still looked arrogant, and there was a hint of coldness in those clear black and white eyes. That icy gaze was enough to make everyone who came to look at each other lower their heads to avoid his sight. Even Magneto felt a sharp thorn in his mind inexplicably. This is the manifestation of the leaked mental fluctuations in the eyes. Just a glance, it seems to see through the other party's thoughts, making people feel inexplicably guilty. Damn bastard. He clearly wore a helmet that was immune to psychic abilities, but at this moment, Magneto still felt an inexplicable panic. The boy who revealed the mysterious unknown has already conveyed a terrifying meaning in his heart. No, what does this guy seem to have done to us? Like a mental plague, the panic that arises in everyone's heart will be passed on to the people around them one by one. This perfectly confirms the psychological point of view that emotions are transitive. This is obviously another new ability born by Su Chen's violent transformation. As long as there is a little fear of Su Chen, the signs of unease will be detonated and quickly transmitted. Court death. Magneto couldn't bear the endless tricks of the opponent, and he wanted to end the battle within this minute as soon as possible. Continue to pretend to be a ghost, and see if I don't kill you. This piece of heaven and earth is still his world. Su Chen can mysteriously erase his own magnetic field, but the ubiquitous natural magnetic field of the earth cannot be erased at all. Just kidding. Once the earth's magnetic field, the whole world will be subverted. A person does not have such magical power. So as long as the magnetic field lines running through the heavens and the earth are still there, he is still the omnipotent king of mutants. Who? Under the deep angry shout, another huge magnetic wave emerged. Come on, you don't have a magnetic field, I'll give it to you, as much as you want. In less than a second, Su Chen's physique was directly endowed with a huge magnetic fluctuation from the whole body. Although his whole body supported a three-dimensional barrier formed by psychic power, he was endowed with too many magnetic energy fluctuations together, so that under the action of a gravitational force, his figure was still ingested by the other party. In order to prevent the other party from performing Jin Chan's escape from the shell again and teleporting away, this time Magneto tried his best to make it difficult for the imprisoned opponent to move. But the weird thing is, the magnetic force fluctuations became weaker and weaker halfway through the flight. Even if Magneto continued to exert it, the force disappeared quickly from around Su Chen's body. Like a mud cow entering the sea, it was swallowed up by the other's body whale. This time, Magneto's complexion became more and more ugly, because he felt an incomparably surging magnetic fluctuation in the other's body. At this moment, Su Chen broke free from the shackles of the opponent's magnetic force in such an understatement, and then stepped into the void like a cloud, standing above the heads of everyone in the middle. This time, based on the void, he did not use telekinesis, but instead relied on a brand new force, the geomagnetic field. Good. Su Chen raised his eyebrows coldly. With the help of the majestic magnetic force in his body, he interacted with the Earth's magnetic field. Similarly, when he stretched his arms, the natural magnetic field around his body immediately resonated with him, and the surging magnetic fluctuations continued to gather in his body, making his breath deeper. Are you stupid and still don't understand what happened? Su Chen's sarcastic remarks were like pouring cold water, making Magneto's heart completely cold. Until now, he was still in a daze and shock. After he gave the opponent a fatal move, everything went more and more strange. It's as if you're pushing the other to level up and evolve. Eccentric. Weird. There was even a drop of cold sweat on Magneto's face. This long-standing mutant leader who had gone through countless battles of life and death could no longer remain calm. The Earth's magnetic field echoed the young man in front of him, and under the resonance, the surging magnetic fluctuations immediately poured into the opponent's body. At this moment, even the magnetic force that Magneto tried to bind him turned into his own power. The two of them competed against each other at the same Earth's magnetic field. Do you want to vomit blood? Su Chen continued to stimulate the Magneto Lord. Compared with those members of the Brotherhood, this Magneto has already felt the strong magnetic fluctuations in Su Chen's body. It can even be said, if you close your eyes and don't recognize it, this person is the so-called Magneto. In fact, this is the horror of Su Chen. If he used the definition of Omega-level existence in the spiritual realm to describe himself, it would not be objective and rigorous, and it could even be said to be very one-sided and lack of understanding. During Su Chen's first physical examination as a mutant student, Qin Gele discovered that the ability of the X gene was only a small part of his strength. Even if there is no expression of the X gene to form a specific ability, it will not affect Su Chen's other abilities. Inherited gene segments that mutate extremely rapidly. Highly active exascale cellular particles. These two are the specific talents of Su Chen. In other words, the X gene is just a special one of his countless genes. It is optional, or it can be said to be the tip of the iceberg. The latter's highly active cell particles also performed a thorough performance just now, and the fatal injury was instantly rescued by the extraordinary healing cell speed. The former, in a state of mental bewilderment, even accelerated the speed of genetic mutation evolution by 1,000 times. In other words, the millions of years it took for apes to reach Homo erectus may only take a minute or even half a minute for Su Chen. Darwin. This reminded Su Chen of the ability of the black little brother. He also named his infinite evolutionary talent, Super Darwinian Physique. Adapt to all environments, generate heat-resistant genes in volcanoes, and cold-resistant genes in ice and snow worlds. Adapted to all enemies, able to heal quickly and adapt quickly after being injured, and evolved methods of restraint. This is also why Magneto was still effectively manipulating the iron element of the human body and controlling his own biological magnetic field, which completely failed after a few seconds. Obviously, after Su Chen was severely injured, the mutated gene quickly remembered the weak point and quickly adapted. Also because Magneto set off a huge magnetic field fluctuation in the entire castle, Su Chen, who was in it, began to adapt very quickly. After being poured into the magnetic fluctuations and quickly killed, Su Chen's physique has undergone amazing changes. This sounds a bit like a doomsday physique. But Su Chen has done more than that. He is evolving mutated genes all the time, and has also transformed many abilities during the runaway period. Similar to the momentary movement of the Red Devil, it is more convenient for Su Chen to travel. The shuttle barrier, similar to the Phantom Cat, was used once against Magneto before. There is also the re-derivation of psychic ability, the spiritual plague, which allows fear to continue to spread in the sea of people. The rampant Su Chen also felt the transformation process of genes. He could vaguely perceive the next move of his genes in his body, and truly understood the ability of most genetic codes to be decoded. Super durable, super physical strength, bone precision, skin strengthening, visceral strengthening. Su Chen somewhat sees that this is the gene to further compensate for his physical strength, so as to avoid being blasted from the inside out by the enemy again. So it's a joke when you compare an Omega-class mutant to me. This is ironic enough. After all, the X gene represented by the Omega level is really the tip of the iceberg of his strength, and it is really insignificant compared to the infinitely evolved genes. Asshole. Magneto, who couldn't accept reality at all, attacked. Still not believing in evil, he suddenly exploded with even more terrifying magnetic fluctuations. With one move of his hand, a piece of earth under his feet suddenly broke away from the geological structure. It was as if Mount Tai had slammed into Su Chen in front of him, and this bombardment was definitely more exaggerated than the meteorite. Not enough, old man. Su Chen faced it indifferently. His body was exactly the same, and a terrifying magnetic wave also erupted. This moment. Perhaps because the magnetic force was too strong, a light blue color lingered around him, and before the land block that had been pressed down was pushed away by him in a low-key manner. Shaw. Another metal pipe attacked like a snake, but before you could get close, he obediently lost his magnetic force and fell down in front of Su Chen. Go. Under his greeting, he suddenly turned his back. Not only the spiritual snake turned into a metal steel cable, but all the metal utensils in the entire castle. From small iron spoons to large metal tableware, all the metal parts in the ancient castle were chaotic and flew to Magneto. Wow. This suddenly caused an uproar. Isn't this the ability of Magneto? For a time, even the stupidest person realized that this young man suddenly possessed the ability of Magneto to manipulate the magnetic field. You're old. Under the disdainful words, Su Chen went even further, waving his hands, and even further disintegrating the magnetic field's support for him. Without the constant support of the magnetic field, the aged Magneto seemed as if time had passed, and his hair that had just been dyed black turned white again. Magneto also obviously did not expect that the other party's control of magnetic force became more and more skilled to this extent. Where did this monster come from? Damn. Magneto clearly felt the loss of his own power, and both were robbing the Earth's magnetic field for the blessings of this world. In just an instant, Su Chen's breath changed dramatically again, and his strength became more and more condensed. It's time to end. In an instant, Su Chen's figure disappeared in place like a ghost. Magneto's pressure suddenly increased greatly, because he couldn't feel the other's biological magnetic field at all, and he couldn't locate his position with the iron element of the human body. This time, his perceptual scan seemed to be exploited by the other party, and he began to approach silently. It's the right side. With the old fighting experience, Magneto sensed that a murderous intent suddenly came from the right side. Before he could turn around, a figure came out of the void so mysteriously and unpredictably. The surging magnetic wave slammed into Su Chen's figure, but this time, it disappeared without a trace like falling into an abyss. Magneto's subconscious counterattack, trying to repel the opponent's figure, not only did not play a small role, but further increased his strength. Not good. The approaching figure didn't stop his movements at all, and Su Chen slammed another punch. A block of metal devices turned into copper walls and iron walls under the power of Magneto, trying to block the fist, but there was no sound of collision at all. Just like the last time, the ability to traverse obstacles was released again. Su Chen's punch passed through the metal wall without any obstruction, and then slammed into Magneto's body. What? Magneto subconsciously blocked with his right hand. Click. The sound of broken bones burst out like this, and his face was twisted all at once. With the help of magnetic fluctuations that combine his own super strength and the blessing of the Earth's magnetic field, Su Chen's punch is enough to easily knock down a building. Boom. Magneto's body, even though the magnetic force has been strengthened a lot, but after a stalemate for a moment, it still can't support it, and the whole body is still flying upside down. Outside. Su Chen didn't give the other party a chance at all. The figure disappeared like a ghost, and before Magneto's figure landed smoothly, when he appeared again, he immediately raised his leg and gave the other party a kick. Boom. As if it was treated like a ball, Magneto's body continued to be teleported and kicked by Su Chen in midair. This is like treating people as human sandbags. The humiliating Magneto can only passively be beaten, without being able to fight back at all. When the last kick completely landed on the opponent's heart, the mutant leader suddenly fell into the Hudson River in the distance like a cannonball. The moment it touched the river surface, a water column dozens of meters high was directly aroused, and the strength of it can be seen. Lord Magneto, he hanged and beaten unilaterally? No one expected that the situation would suddenly turn around and the mighty Magneto, the long-renowned leader of the mutants, would be kicked to the death like a sandbag without any resistance. It's so stupid, so embarrassing. At this time, the night girl who had collapsed on the ground earlier was like a mourning concubine. She never thought that her biggest reliance would be such a fiasco. The ability of the young man in front of her had far exceeded the limit of her imagination. Please. Seeing that nightmarish figure gradually walking towards her, her pupils suddenly shrank violently, and even her tone was rare to beg for mercy. From the moment when Su Chen's spirit crazily penetrated into reality, the night girl and the people present in the hall felt uncomfortable. In particular, this woman is still the target of revenge that he is subconsciously staring at, so the figure of this lady who is especially able to run has long been cut off by the invisible force of reality. In front of her, she was unable to run and could only pray for the victory of Magneto. It is a pity. The king of mutants who hoped to be crowned has been completely suppressed by one-sided, and now his life and death are unknown. Everything is my fault, please. Give me a chance and I can find you. The most promising men in the world. Which pot does not mention which pot to open. The words of the night girl made Su Chen smile slightly, and the killing intent in his eyes became more and more solid. From this moment on, the Night Walker knew that she would definitely die. At this time, not far away, there were at least sirens from several streets, and many army armored vehicles rushed in this direction. In the distant sky, there was also the sound of the engine cruising the sky, and I saw a meteor-like figure traveling through the night, approaching the manor. This is not for Su Chen. Obviously, the huge amount of radiation fluctuations released by the machine activated by Magneto just now attracted the attention of the inspection department. In addition to the army of the official institution, the Stark Group headquarters building in Manhattan, that is, Tony the Iron Man, also captured the terrifying fluctuations that wanted to radiate the whole city at the first time. Sir, the strong radiation fluctuation just now is enough to activate the X gene in the human body and stimulate the biological formation of the X gene. The super artificial intelligence Jarvis has already analyzed it for Tony Stark for the first time. Tony, who escaped from the banquet, was full of alcohol and had to wear his latest Mark IV armor and quickly rushed to the central source of the radiation just now. Looks like someone should have stopped it early. Unfortunately, I missed another chance to make the headlines. Seeing that the radiation fluctuations disappeared without a trace, Tony joked at the right time. Wait, who is that person? At the manor where the ground was full of fire, Tony immediately captured the only standing figure on the field under the lock of the lens of the steel suit's ultra-high magnification lens. It's just that his information was locked, which immediately caught Su Chen's attention. Su Chen didn't think about it at all. His black and white eyes also had the ability to see far away, and immediately aimed at the figure in the battlesuit. Then, with a slight move of his right hand, a majestic electromagnetic force fluctuated from him as the center, and suddenly a ring shockwave was released. Electromagnetic pulse, or EMP, is a force that is said to cause irreversible damage to a large number of electronic devices. For Su Chen, who controls the magnetic force, releasing this electromagnetic pulse is not as difficult as imagined. In just a moment, with him at the center, the terrifying pulse fluctuations suddenly plunged the place dozens of miles into darkness. The military vehicle approaching from a distance was paralyzed on the ground at once, and Iron Man, who was cruising from high altitude, also changed his face, and the lights of the whole mecha briefly turned black, falling from the air. As this Magneto? Iron Man, who had been specially coated with an anti-EMP coating, had lingering fears, and many armored machines and equipment were paralyzed. If the guy is really at the manor, his metal armor is really giving people food. For a while, he didn't dare to go up. It's over. When all the lighting equipment in the entire area was completely paralyzed by this pulsed magneto-electricity, the night girl's eyes suddenly dimmed. She finally gave up now. The military chariot broke down in the distance, the figure of Iron Man disappeared into the air, and the last straw that could save his life was completely gone. But even if these people can they still resist the terrifying existence of this god blocking and killing gods, and Buddha blocking and killing Buddha? Goodbye. At this moment, Su Chen, who approached, has made the final verdict. Click. His foot just stomped on the opponent's head, and with a click, it burst open like a tattered watermelon. At this moment, the night wind was noisy, and the manor castle, which had been reduced to most of the ruins, was ventilated everywhere, and there were even firelights scattered around, and it slowly burned. Su Chen. On the high platform where the manor has not collapsed, the figure of a girl who was paralyzed on the ground just now finally stood up from the coma. She is a little naughty, and also has the nickname Rakshasa Girl. Capable of absorbing the vitality and superpowers of anyone who comes into contact, in this operation, this girl almost became a scapegoat for Magneto. Everything is over. The sobbing sound came from her mouth. The device that was about to devour all her life had already collapsed, but the sequelae of the strong radiation that had been activated just now were still showing on her body. Her shoulder-length black hair has turned white for several strands, and even her skin has lost its luster, and her whole person's vitality appears to be very weak. Thank you. The little naughty stood up and glanced timidly at Su Chen under the stage. Although he was in a coma and didn't see what happened to the manor, the arrogant gesture of the other party entering the manor and the only standing figure in the entire ruins undoubtedly showed all the answers. To be honest, her heart is still inexplicably close to this young man. Because after entering the freshman year, Su Chen is the only human she can touch skin to skin. The most regrettable place is that the other party left the academy. Now that they meet again here, she still has mixed feelings. Are you okay? She was still a little timid. Little Naughty is still not sure whether the other party is still in a state of mental runaway, at least he has never seen the arrogant and domineering look he just entered. Su Chen's mental fluctuations at this time have already calmed down a lot, and the fluctuations related to reality all over his body have also faded away. After killing the Nightcrawler, the anger in his heart subsided a little, and he has fully returned to his senses. You are too weak, absorb him. Su Chen raised his hand slightly, and a figure buried in the corner of the ruins was absorbed by him with psychic energy. The Brotherhood is still alive, but has lost consciousness. But for a little Naughty, it's too scary to take the initiative to absorb other people's lives. But when he thought about his tragic experience, he was regarded as a ruthless scapegoat by his fellow mutants, and the grief and anger instantly diluted the mind of the Virgin. To live, to become stronger. The little Naughty pressed his hands directly on this body, and the surging vitality suddenly emerged. In just a short moment, the girl's white hair has completely turned black, and even her skin is completely full of elasticity, restoring its youthful luster. Half a minute later, the figure who was faintly struggling was completely dead. The little Naughty gritted her teeth. This was the first time she had truly killed someone, but the trace of guilt in her heart disappeared after only half a second. Obviously, many people's mentality has changed after this major incident that included the upheaval of the college. Su Chen. Before the little Naughty was ready to face Su Chen cheerfully, the name that came in the first second made her realize that a familiar lady had arrived. It's the Phoenix female Qin Ge Lei. Dressed in a red trench coat, waist-length red hair, tall and slender, like a supermodel, there were faint red fluctuations around her at this time. That is the embodiment of the power of the Phoenix. Compared with Su Chen, who is constantly moving in an instant, it takes a lot of effort for Qin Ge Lei to arrive just by tracking her mental imprint. Looking at this young girl who had gone through all the trouble, after Su Chen calmed down, he looked directly into the other person's eyes and said, "Qin, let's go together." Jean Grey was not happy in the academy. The mental prison given by Professor X isolated her negative emotions, so that she did not reveal the slightest negative attitude. But this is unhealthy. In order to suppress the power of the Phoenix and restrain the opponent's rampage, the price Qin paid was not small. The repressible emotions have never been channeled for a day, but instead, this will turn into the birth and growth of the dark Phoenix that incubates the negative personality. Even if Su Chen doesn't have the familiarity of studying psychology, he naturally knows that the film and television version of Qin Ge Lei has become more extreme and terrifying because of this. Facing the sudden invitation, Qin Ge Lei was a little stunned, and there was a hint of hesitation and confusion on that gentle and delicate face. But in just 2 seconds, she also looked directly at Su Chen and nodded very seriously. It is good. Walk together. The words of the two were extremely solemn. This scene also made the little naughty on the high platform feel a little sad. She calmed down and spoke directly to break the embarrassing situation of being a third party. Look, there are 2 more people by the river, as if they suddenly appeared. At this moment, not far from the manor, on the edge of the Hudson River, the body of Magneto who fell into the river has been salvaged by a blue-skinned woman. It's a witch. After the 2 mutant forces were completely separated, Mystique did not choose to play with Professor Charles from childhood to adulthood, but followed Magneto. Today, this woman is doing artificial respiration for Magneto, but unfortunately, the loss of vitality is irreversible. Magneto has died under Su Chen's hands. And a man and a woman who appeared on the other side of the river out of thin air just watched this scene. My mother said that I hope to be buried with him one day after I die. I wanted to fulfill her wish, but forget it, this dog man is not worth it. As the abandoned children of Magneto, Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver did not show the slightest sadness. Wanda is just a little more complicated. On the other hand, Kuai-in spread its hands indifferently. Scarlet Wanda and Quicksilver appeared so suddenly. In the film and television version of the Marvel Universe, the twins are not related to Magneto in any way, and even their abilities are not caused by the X gene, but the development of superpowers given by the Mind Gem. But in the official comic setting, they are the legitimate sons and daughters of Magneto. If it weren't for the fact that the copyright of the previous X-Men film and television adaptations was not in their hands, the Marvel Universe would not have changed their settings. So, Su Chen was not surprised by their appearance. You are strong. Facing the murderer of her father, the Scarlet Witch said to Su Chen in the distance across the river. It was obvious that the 2 of them were separated by a long distance, and it was already difficult for the sound to spread, and Wanda didn't raise the pitch much, but her words were still very magically spread in the ruins of the manor. You are special too. Certainly. The same applies to you, Phoenix Girl. Scarlet Wanda said flatly. A time. The atmosphere was inexplicably strange. Among the personnel on the field, there were actually 3 Omega-level existences. Not only that, they also belonged to the spiritual realm. Compared with Qin Ji Lei, the host of the Phoenix Force, the Scarlet Witch Wanda also has a mysterious origin. She had an adventure in her childhood and obtained the magical power of chaos outside the cosmic dimension. Its peak performance in comics is not to obliterate the vast majority of mutants in one sentence, but to have the terrifying power to move the order of the entire universe and even subvert it. Don't worry. Although Magneto is my true father, I have no intention of fighting. Scarlet Witch sensed Qin Gray's nervousness and signaled that she should not be too hostile. At the moment of Magneto's death, the Scarlet Witch, who suddenly realized the result, was on a whim. It took only half a minute to lead Quicksilver, and she directly crossed a continent, an ocean, and arrived at the river bank in front of her. It was originally to fulfill her biological mother's last wish, but after seeing Mystique, she directly dismissed the idea. You just stand there, don't you want to avenge your parents? Mystique raised her head in grief and looked at the figure on the other side of the river. You know how many women he has, and his biological children are not only us. Besides, in my childhood memory, this man never appeared in my family again. Scarlet Wanda ruthlessly rejected her, and this time, the eyes of many people on the field also turned to another figure coming from the dark. Wow. Looks like I'm not here in the right place. The figure of Iron Man Tony appeared in another direction. Admittedly, he realized that there was a magnetic master who was extremely restrained in the scene, but he still came forward to observe what was going on. However, Tony is not so reckless. Jarvis is preparing to activate the house party system, anytime, anywhere, which is a series of conceptual armors that have not yet been put into experimentation. Before he made up his mind, he even made a phone call to another superhero group that he had never contacted, the Fantastic Four headquarters at the Bartlett Building, and he hoped that the other party would come to Manhattan in person. As for the agency that has already been in contact with him? Please, this institution can't handle these people no matter what, so Tony has already subconsciously ignored them. You came just in time. This Mystique is Senator Kelly. She has killed the other party and used her abilities to impersonate the other party. So the grievances of this young man in front of him must be completely cleared up, and no students in the community school have died. They are just in a coma. If you want to continue promoting the forged testimony of Mr. Kelly, then you can continue to provoke him. Scarlet Wanda explained so indifferently. Mystique, as Congressman Kelly. Chin Ji Lei was shocked by this, as the congressman who had been shouting for the mutant registration bill had already been killed. Mystique was also stupid. She didn't expect that Wanda wouldn't help herself, and she even exposed her secret. At this time, two different spiritual forces suddenly pried open Mystique's head. Compared with Wanda's silent invasion method, the two were not polite at all. Pain. Mystique knows that her memories are being read indiscriminately, and she can't stand the intense pain in her mind. Soon. The origin of the impersonation of Senator Kelly, as well as the beginning and end of the transaction with General Stryker, are also very clearly revealed in it. Humph. You dare to do it? Phoenix female Chin Ji Lei was extremely annoyed. Although the reality at hand is different from the direction of the movie, Magneto, the leader of the Brotherhood, has also betrayed the X-Men for his own benefit. This kind of murderous behavior is really disgusting. Let's go. Su Chen's mood has long since returned to normal. At this time, he is very peaceful, with clear black and white eyes without a trace of impurities. Combined with his warm temperament, it is difficult to combine with the arrogant and domineering figure just now. He still has to make the last trip north, which can be regarded as sorting out the tuition and living expenses that have not been paid for 3 months. Although pushing forward from the result, even if he didn't accept Professor X's olive branch at that time, there would not be many dangerous things happening to him who had just arrived in this world and lost control. Certainly. That's not without its merits. With the assistance of the latest scientific research technology, Su Chen has a clearer understanding of his physical characteristics and accumulated more abundant knowledge as a reserve. Other than that, it's Chin Gray. If it wasn't for his original decision, he wouldn't have known Phoenix Girl. After the matter is over, let's find a beautiful landscape environment to live together. Facing Su Chen's vision and vision for the future, Phoenix Girl nodded. This night was not very peaceful. The Xavier Academy of Gifted Boys has undergone drastic changes. Professor X and many students were taken away by General Stryker. And soon, Magneto, another leader of the mutants, also fell, and was officially killed by the Hudson River. No matter how the Mystique rescued him, he could not save his life. With the leaders of the two mutants having accidents one after another, and a major incident in which 1 million people in Manhattan almost died, neither the superhero group nor the official agency could sleep this night. Washington, D.C. Headquarters Tri-Wing Building. Nick Fury, the current director of Who Wears a Blindfold, received the relevant feedback with a delay. I didn't expect that the leaders of the two mutants had an accident, but there were 3 more terrifying mutants. He rubbed his eyebrows, surprised by the intelligence department's feedback. Would you like to notify General Stryker? Phil Coulson, who was standing aside, reminded. Do not. Let him be approached by that boy. Organizations are not monolithic. Has heard stories of General Stryker collecting and imprisoning mutants everywhere and doing human experiments in these years. Some of the children were not even spared. Looks like I'm going to prepare a bunch of flowers in advance for his tomb. The manor that has been reduced to ruins has long lost the figure of the battle just now. The Human Torch, which came like a flaming meteor, and the other members of the Fantastic Four who were on a supersonic fighter plane, failed to meet Su Chen and others at all. Exaggerated. The guy even said it was kind of scary. Invisible female Susan sighed. In addition to the fire, there were still faint mental fluctuations around the scene, which slowly disappeared like the embers of fireworks. Are you sure that this young man didn't run out of control? As an invisible woman who also has a good sense of motivation, she expressed her confusion. No, just left like a normal person. Iron Man Tony thought for a while and said seriously. This is unbelievable. Can this young man be able to put it back and forth freely? Not only that, the boy can even control the magnetic field. Tony looked serious. He saw in the air with his own eyes that it was this young man, not Magneto, who released the electromagnetic pulse himself. The paralysis of the electronic devices in this area could be said to be entirely his own work. That's weird. What does he have to do with Magneto? How could it be possible to use the same magnetic field control ability of the same vein? And it seems to be quite powerful. At least under Jarvis artificial intelligence scanning, there are still more magnetic fluctuations in this ruined area, and many non-magnetic objects can be absorbed by magnets. Where did he go? I don't know. It looks like I'm looking for General Stryker. North America. Snowfield. After the psychic rampage ended, any ability formed by the mutant gene in it was retained by Su Chen, so that he had a very convenient way of moving. The departure of Su Chen and Phoenix Girl from the border did not trigger any alarm, and the space shuttle ability of teleportation was enough to visit any place unwittingly. The limit of teleportation is farther. The Phoenix Girl keenly felt the change every time she traveled. Yes. At the beginning, Su Chen's limit distance of space shuttle was only more than 20 kilometers, but now he seems to be heading for a distance of 30 kilometers, each time he transfers farther, and the frequency becomes faster. Use it or lose it principle. Su Chen also summarized one more characteristic for his infinitely evolved physique. The more the ability is used, the more obvious its power or effect will be. This is in line with nature's use it or lose it principle. It's not far away. Phoenix Girl has already felt the specific positioning. Although they don't have the accurate mutant radar search ability of Nightcrawler for the time being, but never underestimate the perception ability of these two people. Especially Su Chen, the first ability of his X gene is sensory enhancement. Su Chen, who was stepping on the snowfield, looked at the sky where the snow was pouring, and looked far away, and soon he could see a standing mountain standing at the end of the horizon. His black and white eyes immediately glowed with a hint of luster, like an astronomical telescope that self-retracts and magnifies the scene of the mountains in the distance. There were obvious renovation projects on the surface of the snow-capped mountain, and he saw a rusty gate at the top of the mountain. There is even a dam at the foot of the mountain, which is an abandoned reservoir built on the edge of the spring water of the snow mountain in the past. Su Chen also listened to the sound, and the whirring snow wind was consciously blocked by him, and the delicate human words inside the mountain followed. He blinked a little, and his eyes suddenly ushered in the ability of infrared vision. No one can imagine a figure several kilometers away. With just his own eyes and ears, he can clearly observe the scene of this secret base. They noticed us. Su Chen already knew the direction of the other party, and obviously began to be alert. Without further ado, satellites deployed in low Earth orbit in outer space capture their location information in real time. In this regard, Su Chen doesn't care, because he didn't intend to sneak in. Striker, I'm here to take your head. His words roared away with the wind of the snow-capped mountain, and then it penetrated the entire snow-capped mountain so strangely, and echoed through the entire secret base hidden underneath. And this sound transmission ability is just what Su Chen has learned about Wanda the Scarlet Witch just now. Striker, I'm here to take your head. The dull voice echoed in the snow-capped mountains at once. Inside this completely hollowed-out snow-capped mountain, there is a secret experimental base. From this moment on, all the personnel inside, including the mutants imprisoned in the cage, undoubtedly heard a voice. From Su Chen's voice, "Damn brat." At the deepest headquarters, General Striker's expression changed. He didn't expect two Omega-level mutants to come directly to the door. It is good. There is no shortage of the two of you, just to provide me with experimental materials. In order to avoid being invaded by the mind, he immediately asked people to prepare his own special shielding helmet. Kill them. You don't need to keep your hands. Stryker didn't dare to be too big, and didn't aim to catch them, and immediately sent someone to activate the latest X-weapon. At the same time, the major peripheral alerts outside the Snow Mountain base have also been triggered. The sniper in white mink sank into the snow, only the muzzle of one sniper rifle came out. There are more than one snipers like this, and the weapons in their hands are a big guy, anti-material heavy sniper rifles, and even the bullets are specially made of Edmund alloys. Edmund alloy. Known as the hardest metal on Earth, it shows no sign of melting at thousands of degrees Celsius. Indestructible and unstoppable. And these guard snipers were originally designed to defend against Wolverine, but now they are used on Su Chen. Fire. After receiving the firing order from the rear, several snipers immediately locked their scopes on the heads of Su Chen and Phoenix Girl. Lock the eyebrows, impartiality, just this shot hits, let alone flesh and blood, even a bunker, it will be blasted through for this. However, what they didn't know was that such a short-term lock on Su Chen's vitals was very dangerous, and it even exposed their location. Boom. The trigger has been pulled, but the expected gunpowder has not been released, and the entire slender sniper rifle is jammed. Damn. A number of snipers pulled the bolt at the same time, quickly pressing down another Edmund bullet. When their eyes turned to the sight again, a smile appeared on the handsome and energetic face, and their eyes penetrated thousands of meters with interest, making people shudder. Damn. Under the shouts, the snipers who held back their tremors pulled the trigger again. Boom. At this moment, the gun exploded instantly, and the penetrating Edmund bullet together with the metal fragments of the gun suddenly blasted through each of their heads. Obviously, this is Su Chen's ability to modify probability. The mental runaway is over, but the ability to form genetic mutations will not disappear. this mysterious and unpredictable probability tampering ability can be said to be handy. Locking and blasting are all very small and low probability events, but Su Chen, like God, fixed the probability infinitely and repeatedly at a point. The first cordon on the periphery was instantly killed by him easily. Soon. Su Chen's body is so automatic without wind, his feet are off the ground, under the resonance of the Earth's magnetic field, he cancels the gravity, and he is above the sky in an understatement. This guy. The person observing from a distance suddenly took a breath of cold air, because with the movement of the other party, all the objects in the facilities in the entire dam began to tremble inexplicably. Furthermore, because of the biomagnetic field of the human body, everyone was slightly dizzy, and they only felt that the lunch in their stomach was about to come out. Not good. Run. Feeling the trembling metal walls around, someone finally realized what was about to happen. From the next second, Su Chen's right hand has been stretched out, holding it in the air from such a long distance. Under the surging magnetic fluctuations, his right hand suddenly clenched tightly, and there was a loud cracking noise in the distance. I saw that the dam base under the snowy mountains seemed to be crushed by an invisible giant hand, and it collapsed from it. Stand up. With a sour metal cracking sound, the entire dam base suddenly formed a can that was crushed by someone's foot, and the interior space completely collapsed. Hundreds of these military personnel were buried in this base. In just over 10 seconds, such a large dam base, which was large enough to intercept the melting ice and snow, turned into a huge piece of abandoned metal garbage under Su Chen's stalwart magnetism. Isn't this Magneto's ability? General Stryker was also shocked. The secret bases that belonged to the snow-capped mountains were not affected. After all, they had considered Magneto's abilities before, otherwise they would not have deliberately hollowed out the mountain. How can this kid have the power of Magneto? An uneasy mood lingered in his heart, and inexplicably, he began to panic. No matter what he thought before this, he was an Omega-level psychic mutant, and as a result such a powerful magnetic fluctuation appeared. This unexpected performance was enough to make him feel uneasy. Speed. Hurry up and send all the latest X-weapons, if there is not one left, send them all. And also, let Master Illusion be dispatched, and all the manipulated puppets will be dispatched, including those X-men who have just been captured. I don't believe it, he can still beat 100 of them. Under the fury, General Stryker, who was desperately ill and went to the hospital, couldn't care about being conservative, and he played all the chips in his hand at once. If it weren't for the presence of too many subordinates, at this moment, in order to ensure his own safety, he would probably have to prepare to rush to the escape route. X-Weapon. A project led by General Stryker, based on Wolverine's self-healing factor, crazy cloning and replication, and adding a new X gene on the basis of it. The experiment was so successful that as many as a dozen different abilities have been successfully replicated in just a few experimental samples. According to his vision, the ultimate experiment of artificial Omega-class mutants is about to usher in the production line. At that time, let alone the X-Men, when other superheroes come together, one of them is a rotten fish and a rotten shrimp, and the power of the entire Earth is at his fingertips. At this moment, under the heavy snow, a battle in the snowfield broke out. Be careful. Chin Ji Lei reminded her, and she was even a little nervous, because she had captured at least dozens of vigorous mental fluctuations that were gradually approaching. Do not worry. Su Chen motioned for her to calm down. There was a hint of luster in his pupils, and when he switched to low-light vision, he saw a blurry figure that outlined human lines. That was the ability of the Invisible Man to be discerned by him. Without waiting for the opponent to approach, Su Chen's backhand was a move. At the sniper's body in the distance, an Edmund alloy bullet was attracted by his magnetic fluctuations. Hukai. After a whistling, the bullet was so fast that it penetrated the back of the head of the Invisible without waiting for the opponent to turn around. And this is just the horn of the battle just sounded, and more figures suddenly ushered in under the snowy mountains. Their expressions showed no emotional fluctuations, and their eyes could even be said to be dull. These people. Among them, there are even a lot of clone samples, and the two people look almost the same. The mutant experimental base. Phoenix Nuken Ge Lei gritted her teeth, and a trace of displeasure appeared on her delicate face. In order to obtain so many experimental data, she did not know how many compatriots would have to die. Su Chen was neither sad nor happy about this, but started the slaughter indifferently. The magnetic fluctuations in his right hand increased, and soon, the anti-equipment sniper rifles and Edmund alloy bullets all flew up. Simultaneous multi-threading of the brain is a basic operation for Su Chen, so the highly penetrating Edmund alloy bullets flew towards each enemy's head and eyebrows with great precision. Whoosh! And those anti-equipment sniper rifles continued to melt and melt into a ball during the flight to Su Chen, and then shaped a brand new metal weapon under his will. A second later, the metal solution flew into Su Chen's hand and was already a metal sword. Swish! There was no hesitation at all. The moment Su Chen held the big sword, he turned around beautifully and swung it into the air behind him. In less than half a second, a figure gradually emerged from the empty back. This guy may have felt a little confused, and his complexion has changed slightly. He never thought that he had not landed after teleporting, and was accurately predicted by Su Chen, and he landed in advance and gave him a knife. Swish! The razor-sharp blade headed directly, and a big head flew into the sky. It is a pity. Not long ago, Su Chen just realized the teleportation and extended it to some spatial laws. After feeling the ripples and fluctuations of the real space on his back, he knew that someone was coming from behind. Before the head fell to the ground, his figure disappeared into the air. Like a ghost, Su Chen, who flickered and shuttled, waved the big sword in his hand, and cut down the X-weapons one by one in an instant. Due to the excessive speed, his afterimages appeared at multiple flickering points. And the deadly Eichmann alloy bullets did not stop at all, and even under the distraction of Su Chen, the magnetic force increased, so that the bullets flew even faster. Puff! 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 The sound that runs through the head is constantly emitted, and these X-weapons can be resisted by raising their hands, or using their abilities to stop them. Boom! When the head behind the owl finally finished flying and fell to the ground, the whole time passed less than 2 seconds. And at the same time as the head fell, within the same 2 seconds, the 27 figures whose heads were pierced by one Edmund bullet, and the 5 figures that were cut off by Su Chen, also fell to the ground. Noodle. Counting the 2 solved by the Phoenix Girl. Less than 2 seconds. Most of the X-weapon experimental subjects on the field were completely killed. Su Chen is so contemptuous of everything, no one can stop him. He shook the broad sword in his hand, and the bloodstains left on the blade splashed red plums directly on the snow. At this time, at the end of the line of sight in the distance, a dazzling red light beam broke through the snow and pointed directly at Su Chen. This ability is very familiar, Cyclops Scott. He waved his hand casually, like a fly swatting, and Scott in the distance was knocked out. Coincidentally, there are many X-Men standing on the opposite side: Shockwave, Steelman, Iceman, Fireman. The other party has some kind of control method to make them lose their sense of self and become puppets. The Phoenix Girl said in surprise, even the leader of the X-Men, Professor Charles, has betrayed. From this moment, a terrifying spiritual will came, and Charles's words full of anger echoed throughout the snowfield. The murderer who slaughtered the mutant children, you are done here. This. The Phoenix Girl was a little stunned. She couldn't imagine that the Mind Master Professor Charles was confused and regarded the two of them as other characters. Interesting. There was a hint of interest on Su Chen's face. It seems that this is the master of the illusion behind the scenes. In the film and television, he can control the weak Professor Charles, and in the comics, he can control the top combat power of the Earth such as the Sentinel. The whole existence can be called a bug. He can implant an inescapable illusion to people, so that people are addicted to it and confuse right and wrong. His strength is indeed not to be underestimated. Unfortunately, not enough. Charles, without a brainwave machine, your mental ability is not enough to see. Su Chen endured the other party's spiritual invasion as if nothing had happened, but he was safe and sound. Pity. This is the second time he has felt a pity. The stronger the stronger the stronger, the weaker, under the circumstance that it is not enough to put pressure on himself. The evolutionary genes are even a little quiet and not active enough. If General Stryker knew that the opponent thought that he was weak, he would probably die of anger. These days, there are still people who hope that the stronger the enemy, the more pressure he will put on him. Too weak. Without the help of the brainwave machine, Professor Charles's strength has dropped a lot. Although the spiritual power is still huge, it is no longer enough to pose a threat to Su Chen. On the contrary, the Phoenix Girl frowned slightly and seemed to be fighting. Without using the power of the Phoenix, the normalized Phoenix Girl is not as strong as Professor Charles. I'm fine. He's mentally weak and his strength is relatively sluggish, so don't worry too much. After flipping through Mystique's memories, they naturally knew that it was this woman who invaded the school and replaced the energy of the brainwave machine, so that Professor X fell into a coma due to a huge mental shock. Now it is in a weak state, Don't think about it, but the illusion master forcibly dominates the other party, making it a puppet and wantonly arousing spiritual fluctuations. At this moment, a more powerful fluctuation of power swayed in this world. The temperature of the snowfield rose rapidly, and even the pouring snow was completely burned out. Clang! The cry of the phoenix resounded under the sky, and under the surge of the power of the phoenix, Chin Gele's figure was suspended in the air, and the surging mental fluctuations instantly impacted the X-Men. Puff! Inside the snow mountain base, a emaciated figure spat out a mouthful of blood. Will, Scythe Striker. Striker's son, is also a famous illusion master. At this moment, all the X-Men under his control were cut off, like the puppets who were connected with each other lost their leads. No matter how powerful Master Illusion is, if he encounters the Phoenix Girl in the spiritual realm, he will be completely abused. For Su Chen, the spiritual and spiritual abilities are only the embodiment of the X gene. They are only part of his many thousands of genes. Compared with the physique of infinite evolution, they are not very important. We are. Snow, where is this? Wait. Phoenix Phantom, is this Chin Gele? After the X-Men regained consciousness, they felt a brief moment of confusion. You guys go to Snow Mountain Base to save those mutant children. Phoenix Girl did not say a few more words, because she can't maintain the Phoenix state for too long. Too much closeness will only make her silent and completely lost. I am here. Su Chen signaled that the other party should not worry too much. Let's go. Let's go together. Su Chen took her hand, and within the next second, a surging spatial fluctuation took them away. Snow Mountain Base. The sound of the alarm has resounded throughout the interior, and the flashing lights constantly reminded the dangers of the outside world. Biometrics fail. Fire approved. But when Su Chen's figure appeared inside, a fully automatic machine gun immediately protruded from the top ceiling, but before the firepower exploded, a psychic cannonball completely shattered it. This way. Chin Gray pointed the way. Across 2 forks, it's the command room of this base. At this time, the headquarters seemed to realize something, and steam valves fell on the passages to close the communication of each passage. More nerve gas was suddenly released from the ventilation pipe. This is a green smoke, which is said to be enough to quickly paralyze an elephant within 2 seconds. Su Chen was indifferent and cold, and didn't say anything. He was just a thought, and the wave of reality tampering erased this poisonous fog. It was another thought, and the heavy steam valve in front of him immediately collapsed from the depression, revealing a group of fully armed figures behind. No, I can't stop him at all. The soldiers who were in place were stunned, and they didn't expect that these defensive measures were equivalent to a piece of tissue paper that was fragile. But their lives have also come to an end, because the moment the steam valve fell, the specially brewed offensive was ready. Under the brewing full of psychic power fluctuations, the formed psychic cannonballs suddenly pushed forward with a crushing force, and all the figures in the way were instantly crushed into blood. Even the other steam valve at the back, including the gate of the command headquarters at the back, were all destroyed in a straight line. The smoke that was lifted filled the broken corridor, and at the end, a steel body withstood the last aftermath of the psychic cannonball. It was also because of his appearance that General Stryker in the command was spared unscathed. Whether it's alive or dead, it's up to him. General Stryker gritted his teeth and said with lingering fears. This is an artificial Omega-level existence. This first experimental body, which has not yet been put into mass production, already has control at the microscopic level, allowing the body to absorb the energy fluctuations from the outside world and release it multiple times. Now, a terrifying wave of light lingered all over the body of the tall, thin figure wrapped in bandages. That was the last energy of the psychic cannonball being absorbed by himself. Kill him. Stryker, who had no way out, cheered him on. Only. Next second. Boom. This tall and thin figure, known as the first artificial Omega-level experimental body, actually became more and more full of light waves lingering around his body, and his body continued to rise like a balloon. Not good. The idiot also knew that this monster was about to explode, and everyone was startled and hurried to hide elsewhere. Boom. When the balloon of the human body rose to the top, the artificial Omega was still burst open, and the energy fluctuations absorbed in the body also blew the entire command room through the flowers. It's not that easy to absorb my power. Su Chen walked slowly. Artificial Omega level like this is ultimately risky, and absorbing energy is even more likely to accidentally self-explode. He is just adjusting the risk probability of occurrence to the scene that the other party is most unwilling to see. Certainly. Such tampering probability is not omnipotent, and Su Chen, like the current Su Chen, simply cannot perform tampering such as making the Earth self-destruct. The difficulty depends on the infinitely low probability and the size of the overall power. Stryker, also dead. Chin Gray said. Under the self-explosion of this man-made Omega class, none of the officers in the command escaped, and the stumps and arms were scattered all over the place, and Stryker himself was killed on the spot. Everything is over.